All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based off of the PowerPoint slides for one of the textbooks for the class, and that being Murach's JavaScript and jQuery 4th edition. I'm in Chapter 18, I should say, how to work with Ajax, and not quite halfway through it yet. So let's just continue on. All right. So we were looking at this where you put in a date and you click view and you get a picture and a description out from an astronomy picture from the api.nasa.gov. Okay. And you'll notice we've got some constants in here. All right, and again, I can't say this to you too many times. You wouldn't really put demo key. You'd actually put your key in there. Okay, but we're building it, in other words. All right, so we're building basically the URL, and then we're telling it to fetch based on that. All right, so again, what can happen? Well, this is all in the onReady state change. If everything was cool, all right, so if the ready state was 4 and the status is 200, all right, we're trying to go through it here. All right, but that's XHR1. Then we've got our XHR2, sorry, and we're doing the same kind of thing. We've even got an XHR3. All right, like I said, this wasn't my goal to go through these in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. All right, but I do want you to realize, as they're showing in here rather, that we're using an arrow function. We've got a fetch, so we are using a callback function in here. Okay, and we're saying once it's completed, then do this, etc. And much of the work that you will end up doing in JavaScript will be done using callback functions. All right. One more method of the promise type. Notice there's a finally that you can put on here. Registers the callback function to execute when a promise is settled. Settled means that either the promise has been accepted or the promise has been rejected. All right. So this callback will be called regardless of whatever you're trying to do, whether it worked or it didn't work. All right. And again, they're showing here the catch to catch any error conditions. Here, as it says, they're doing a catch and they're trying to recover from it. Okay? Because, I mean, with a lot of people, what you end up doing is when you catch and you hit the catch statement, the program will just stop. Is that necessarily what you want to have happen? All right. All right, there's this photo viewer application, as it says, enter an ID from 1 to 5,000. And I'm not sure if they're using that on here. Let's see. Yeah, they're using the fake data from JSON placeholder. So you can put in anything in here. It'll show you a picture, and it'll show you a little description of them. All right. So if you put in anything that's less than 1 or greater than 5,000, it's out of whack or out of range. So you reject it. And you just let them know this. Otherwise, you fetch the one they're asking for. Okay? So you'll notice, as it says in here, my promise equal new promise with a callback. I've already mentioned this to you, that promises are either resolved, meaning they worked, or they're rejected, meaning they didn't work. All right? So I was thinking about this, and I gave an example earlier, but I'm going to give another one. All right? My daughter, who lives in Illinois, was over this weekend, and she and a friend of hers wanted to go see this guy in concert. Dallas Green. When I first heard that, I thought, wow, that's the guy who used to manage the Chicago Cubs and Philadelphia Phillies. No, I don't even know if they're related, but this is the guy. All right. And she signed up and she got herself 2 tickets. Okay. Well, what did she do? Literally, they sent her an email with virtual tickets because that's the way the world is going today. All right. So what she was promised was that when she comes on that date and brings her virtual, which is probably on her phone, I think, she brings those virtual tickets with her on her phone, that when she gets there on that date, that Dallas Green will perform for them. All right. So the promise, when you think about it, if she couldn't do anything until that date, which is in Chicago, like at near the end of September, that would mean that for 2 months she couldn't do anything. Well, she's got that, and basically she can go on now. And on that date, either the promise will be, all right, resolved. In other words, Dallas Green will appear on that date. Dallas Green will perform on that date, or it'll be rejected. If a lot of the times when people were set to go to concerts in the last year or to other venues because of COVID, their stuff was rejected. It just didn't happen. All right. So again, there's the resolve and the reject. And get used to this with a ready state of 4 and a status of 200, meaning everything should be cool. And as it says, here's how you can use that function. Okay. Now, a function that wraps the set timeout in a promise. And really, when you want to actually show what happens with it, with a promise, and really even more than that, kind of with callbacks, period, there's a real simple example that we can use. So we can write something like this. So we can come in here and we can write this. Alert. This is alert number 1. Okay? All right, let's put about 5 of these in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I put those into a JavaScript program and ran them, pretty obvious what would happen. All right. It would come up with an alert that says this is alert 1. As soon as I close that, it would come up with another alert that said this is alert 2 all the way through 5. It's not a big thing. Probably makes at least some sense. All right. But we could also come in there and do this. So we could come in and let's just say that before this one right here, okay, before that alert, we would do an alert, but we would set a timeout for this alert. So what we would say would be, and I don't remember the exact syntax, that's on me. So let's see. Let's see if we can find one in here. All right, I'm just using something that I found online. So it is this, but let me comment both of these out. All right, then let me add this. So set timeout alert, and we'll put this in again. This is alert 3. All right. And when we do this, you'll typically see it, the word will look like this. And here, let's say 5,000. Now what's going to happen is, this is, we'll just remove this. It's going to print this as alert 1. And as soon as you click OK, it'll print this as alert 2. but then it's told to pause for 5 seconds. So it'll go on and say, this is alert 4, then it'll say, this is alert 5, and then after a moment or so, it'll come back and say, this is alert 3. So the point of showing you that, the point of telling you that, is that when you come in here and you start using set timeouts, not just with promises, but with any kind of a callback function, you can, that's one way that you can change the typical order of operations for something. Okay? All right. 5 static methods of the promise type. All settled, race, resolve, and reject. Now, we've already talked about resolve and we've talked about reject already. But what if you've got a bunch of promises? As it says, you've got a bunch of promise objects. And if you want to basically use them as an all or nothing type of an operation, you can use a promise.all. And you can kind of chain them together, basically. All right? And that's what we've done here. This is an array that's called fetch users, and that's what we're using in here. Another way we can do this is we can use the all settled. And again, if something doesn't resolve, it should be caught in the catch statement here. All right. Now, when you start to do this, and like I said, I'm not trying to be confusing to anyone, but I'm trying to be as complete as I can. Back in the olden days, probably the 90s or so, that when you did this, we didn't have promises. We used what were called straight callbacks. All right, and you couldn't chain things together like we have now with the dot then, etc. So you'd say, if this happens, do this, and if that happens, do this, and if that happens, do this, and if that happens, do this, and you'd eventually get into what literally is referred to, and there's a website for it. I think it's callbackhell.com. And you'd get into something like this with a bunch of if statements. All right. And you would say, if this is true, do this, else if this is true, do this, etc. And I don't know if that's, the exact one that they're showing in here, but that's the problem with using just straight callbacks, is you can potentially get into what's called callback hell. So then promises were introduced. All right. And a lot of the same stuff is still happening, but promises are kind of a wrapper around it. Well, even that was considered kind of difficult by people. So now there's kind of a wrapper around promises that are called async await. That again does the same kind of thing, but it's a little bit easier to write. So you come in and you say that you want to run this asynchronously, and you're going to wait, doing a wait until that happens. All right. Now that was not a great example or a great explanation. All right. But it's the one that for now I think will suffice. All right. So they go back and they re-update or they redo this photo viewer app with async await, and they've got a promise.reject in here with it. Okay. All right. Ways to make a cross-origin request to an API that doesn't allow them. Don't use iframes. All right. There are certain times when iframes are considered acceptable, but not normally. All right. This is JSON with padding. Again, not recommended. Use a third-party proxy, only recommended for prototyping and testing. This is the one you want to do. That when you get into stuff that's this complex, you want to take control of it yourselves. All right, and that's it. All right. Now, again, we're going to go through. I just want to make sure that people understand this. And again, I'm doing this a little bit out of order, but it's still okay. The class itself, the idea is, in the past, what we've done is, yeah, we've got this book right here. In fact, I'm going to go like this. And I'm going to bring that in here. And I'm going to click on, I thought I was going to click on that. How about web design? There we go. In the past, the way that this class was taught, the AWD 1000 class was taught, is we'd spend approximately 40 days on this book right here, HTML5 and CSS3. All right, you'll notice there's about 20 chapters in it. We'd go through most every chapter, and we'd get through most of it in 40 days. Then we would jump into this book, and we'd spend the last 40 days on this. The problem is when we've done this in the past, we get through these first 7 chapters. We would also do 8 to 11 because we were using jQuery more than we are now. But then we typically run out of time. All right. Now we're planning on spending about 20 days on JavaScript. I'm sorry, about 20 days on HTML and CSS, and about 60 days on JavaScript. So we should be able to get through this. Again, we're going to skip that. We should be able to get through all of this and at least give you this, an introduction of this. So that's what you've got to look forward to in the class. All right. Thanks.